We hear a lot of talk these days about our superpowers, our special skill sets, and our personal truth. We hear about the things that make you you. We hear about the strengths you possess and how you can play to those strengths to find success in any area of life. But what about your unique ability? In this video, we'll be talking about that one unique ability, and it's not a mindset or a perspective, but an ability that you possess that can help you through a challenge every single time. This podcast is all about helping you with your spiritual growth so you can overcome obstacles and manifest your destiny to crystallize and materialize any dream, basically, to have success on life's journey. It's all about getting unstuck by unlocking your hidden power. So let's get started. Hi there and welcome. My name is Remy, like Do Re Mi. I'm a best-selling author and creator of the Get Unstuck Revolution. I help extraordinary women just like you dissolve the obstacles in your path so you can bring success to you. Now let's get started with today's video. Okay, let me jump off the screen here and switch over to my laptop. Every one of us is unique, from our upbringing to our experiences that helped to mold and shape us to what energizes and inspires us toward success. And often the things that make us so unique come so naturally that we don't recognize them as being unique or special. Yet this hidden power can help us through a challenge and on to success every single time. If you'd like to see success in full abundance along life's journey, and if you're wanting to tap into a greater knowingness and align with the higher consciousness of your infinite self, instead of the lower ego thinking that pushes success away, then this is for you. It's time to be unabashedly, unapologetically, happily untethered to ego thinking. It's time to align with the higher energies of our soul's path instead. This episode is for you if you wonder, what is your unique ability, and do we all have it? How can you use this ability to get through a challenge every single time? And why do we sometimes persist in a given direction and other times we just give up? Well, these episodes are about how to find your hidden power when you want to transform challenges into successes. I like to call it the audacity of alchemy. Because when we're feeling stuck, it's never the situation that has us stuck. It's our energy that's become stuck in anxiety, overwhelm, doubts, worries, frustrations, indecision, and even anger. And often this is because of a spiritual injury that we've experienced, some kind of a hidden trauma. So it isn't the pain of the situation, it's the pain of not being connected in the natural energy of who we really are, of being connected to that magical part of us that's a creative vibrational being who can use positive energies to create what we want and bring it into physical manifestation. We can allow our manifestations to materialize and not get stuck in the negative vibrations that block them. These positive energies that we talk about so much are where we find the magic of alchemy, because our choice of frequency, our choice of those positive thoughts and emotions can change the course of our journey. And as we go along our journey, we hear a lot of talk these days about our superpowers as if we're some kind of a hero, our special skill sets as if we possess a talent that no one else has, and our personal truth, which becomes our North Star. And all of this is good because it helps us to see more clearly who we really are, especially after we've been through a setback or a spiritual injury. But what we're talking about today is your unique ability. It's an ability, it's not a mindset, and it's not a perspective or a positive energy, but an ability. And the ability that I'm talking about is the ability of tenacity, of persistence toward a specific goal. But it isn't just tenacity or the ability to persevere, because in certain situations, we have no option but to keep putting one foot in front of the other, right? We may have a sick child. We may be facing a bit of a financial challenge, or we may be in the fight of our lives for a promotion we've been after and we just aren't willing to give up. Have you ever considered why there are some things where we're willing to make every effort, pull out all the stops, and keep trucking toward success, and why there are other things that we'd prefer to escape or hide from, or we just drop the ball? In what situation is it okay to give up because we should give up? Or, as someone once said in one of my workshops, I thought I would enjoy this, but I'm really realizing that I want to give it back. When is it in our best interest to keep going? And when is it in our best interest to just give it back? Well, that begs the question, is there a difference between giving up, being lazy, or making a fear based decision? I'd like you to think about something that you once walked away from. Think about something you once walked away from and ask yourself, did you give up? Were you being lazy? Or was it a fear based decision? Or was it something else? So, we're talking about persistence, and we have this ability of persistence ingrained in us to know when to be persistent and when to pivot if we'll recognize this ability and tap into it. And that's what today is all about. Because at some point, we recognize that we've done everything we can, we've turned every stone, we've done our very, very, very best, and we've persisted toward the best possible outcome. So now what? Well, now it's time to surrender our situation to a power greater than we are, right? Well, maybe. I don't know about you, but I kind of hate those maybe answers. And I'm one who does not favor ambiguity. If you tell me, well, it depends, then I absolutely want to know exactly what it depends on. And so I promised not to leave you hanging. Here's a perspective for you to consider. We each have our own journey, we each have our own path. And the answer that's right for me may not be the answer that's right for you. There are some people who have an incredible strength to be in the flow, and that's just never come as easily for me as it has for others. And there are some people who have an incredible strength to surrender, and that has never come as easily for me as it has for others. In other words, we each have our reasons for being here and what lessons we've wanted to learn on our particular journey. Now, I'm the kind of person who doesn't like ambiguity. I like to know what the target is so I can take aim and fire at the target. It's my strength as a Sagittarian, the archer. So I often ask myself, why do I get these experiences in front of me all the time that have some element of ambiguity? If being an archer and firing at the target is my strength, at least according to astrology, then shouldn't I be able to use that strength to get through my challenges? Or is it something I'm supposed to overcome and learn how not to be an archer, but to be in the flow or to surrender? So when we hear this term, play to our strengths, is this why so many obstacles end up in our path? Do we have a strength that's intended to be tested, or is it to be strengthened even more? I mean, I just would like you to think for a minute about what your strengths are. And they don't have to be related to your astrological sign, but think for a minute about what your strengths are. Just think for a minute about what your strengths are and ask yourself whether they're constantly tested or whether there's something that you pull out and use on a regular basis to get you through a challenge. Hmm, something to think about, right? Okay, then. So we're talking about persistence. We know that the human spirit has the ability to persevere, to exhibit tenacity, and to persist on a given course. We know that we have tremendous resolve. So, why are we able to sometimes be persistent and sometimes we give up or we walk away? And this brings us to the other side of the coin. Since we live on a duality planet, we have right versus wrong, black versus white, fear versus love. Well, we almost can't have persistence without its exact opposite if we're on a duality planet, right? And so, what's the opposite of persistence? Well, most people might say to stop, which is the same as giving up, running, hiding, avoiding, and so on. And that's what our ego mind would tell us to do. But there's another option, and that's to change course, to change direction, to pivot. And this is our unique ability that's ingrained in us. We know we have the option to persist in a given direction, and we have the flexibility to know when to pivot. And when we think about it, if we've been persisting towards something that we really want and we suddenly give up, how is giving up going to take us toward what we really want? Was that too much of a brain twister? Let me say that again. If we've been persisting towards something that we really want and suddenly we give up, How is giving up going to take us toward what we really want? And yet, our ego mind just loves it when we give up. It loves to overtake us, it loves to win us over to the side of fear. All too often, we don't realize that instead of giving up, oh, we can just simply pivot. It's just that simple. We don't have to give up and we don't have to walk away. When we think about it, what is most likely going to create a transformation in our lives? Do we give up? Or do we become flexible enough to change our current direction with a pivot? When we've been persisting in a particular direction and we've done everything we can, what's likely going to create a transformation? Giving up or pivoting? The thing is, we often don't know when to pivot, and that's why we sometimes give up. We become frustrated and overwhelmed with our situation. It scares us. Maybe it seems like it's too much. And so instead of regrouping and exploring the possibilities, we may opt to take a breather, or we may just opt out altogether. But will that really create a transformation? And so the question becomes, when should we pivot? When exactly do we say it's time to make a change? Well, one marker is if you're progressing too slowly, despite the amount of work you're putting into it, you may need to consider pivoting. This will be true at work and in relationships at work or at home. Just be sure that you've clearly identified your objective first and you know what you're moving toward and not just pivoting for the sake of pivoting. We want to be sure that we still have a clear objective in mind. And then, two, is if you're getting feedback that something needs to change. And if it's feedback that you trust. Sometimes other people give us feedback because they're trying to get the spotlight off of themselves for their own lack of commitment. And sometimes we have clients or people on social media who just want to complain. So we always want to consider the source. And speaking of the source, we know that our ego mind just loves to scream at us and tell us how wrong it all is. So when we're getting feedback in the form of negative thoughts, just consider that source. Some people say that the ego wants to destroy us, but I like to look at the ego as presenting us with an opportunity. The opportunity is to see what we don't want in order to get more clear about what we do want. So if your ego is screaming at you, take the opportunity to look at the difference between what you don't want and what you do want. If your fears are coming to the surface, that's an opportunity to look at the difference between what you don't want and what you do want before deciding to make a pivot. All right, and here comes number three. Your third marker is if you realize you're headed in the wrong direction. You know, sometimes we set out on a course and then we decide that it just isn't bringing in the joy or fulfillment that we were expecting. Our intuition may be nudging us to do something differently, or it may even be a real world experience like, well, I thought I wanted to be a tennis champion and discover I kind of like the pace of racquetball so much more. So that's number three, if you realize that you're just in the wrong direction. And here's number four. This marker is if you discover a mismatch in values. Oh, this is one of my favorites, and it's super common. When we find ourselves under stress, it's often because we're violating our own values and we're involved in something that we don't want to be involved in. And other times, there's a value that's trying to bubble up to the surface that we've actually never thought about before. And I think I've mentioned this on other episodes, most breakups in business and in our personal lives are rarely because of what we think they are. Most breakups are a mismatch of values. Most breakups in business or in our personal lives are a mismatch of values. And our last marker here, number five, is if you decide that you want to become a stronger version of yourself. You know, sometimes we come to a point where we'd like to take ourselves to a new level of performance, to stretch and grow in ways that we never have before. Maybe we want to break from routine, or we're finding that it's time for a new mindset. Maybe we're fully understanding now who we're meant to be, and perhaps this means leaving our old group of friends, or leaving our current industry, or just leaving our behaviors. Being flexible enough to know when it's time to pivot sometimes means that we need a reason. And these are the five reasons that I'm giving you here that I see in my workshops pretty often. But this is by no means a complete list. So I'd like you to take a minute and just reflect on a time in your life when you've successfully made a pivot and it turned out to be the best possible outcome. Maybe you had to change your business model. Maybe you had to leave a group that you once adored, or maybe you joined a group. Maybe you decided to get married and start a family. I'd just like you to think of a time in your life where you've successfully made a pivot and it was the best possible outcome. Was it one of these five common reasons that we've talked about today, or did you make a pivot for some other reason? You see, it's good to identify your reasons right now with a clear head because we sometimes find ourselves in sudden or new situations or on the brink of a change, and we need to justify our reasons for pivoting. And knowing our reasons before we're in a crisis helps us to feel more grounded and to freely look toward our future if we ever do get into an obstacle that seems insurmountable. And is there a pivot that you need to make right now? Is there a pivot that you need to make in life or in business right now? Do you need to end a partnership that you really didn't want to end? Let me say that again. Did you end a partnership that you didn't really want to end? You wanted it to progress. Did you ghost somebody and you're getting feedback from your soul that was a messed up thing to do? Did you say something to yourself that put you in the wrong direction and you wish you could take it back? Have you had enough time to reflect and realized your values were out of line and you'd like to repair that now? Or have you had time enough to reflect and now you're ready to become a stronger version of yourself? These are all things that are worthy to reflect on, right? Okay, then. What if we want to, but we don't know how to pivot? Well, this is a very common question that I get. I don't know which direction to take, or I'm not sure which path is right for me. I've got on those blacked out glasses and can't see what I'm supposed to do. Well, when we don't know how to pivot, one option is to look back to our objective. What is it that we were trying to create right from the get go? The challenge we're experiencing right now may simply be asking us to get more clear or to go get back on track. And another option, if we don't know how to pivot, and we talked about this on a recent episode, is to use our joy factor. What kind of pivot can we make to bring in more joy and more fulfillment? This idea that you have a unique ability to persist toward the best possible outcome, and it's an ability, it's not a mindset and not a perspective or positive energy, but you have an ability to persist on a given course. But it isn't just persistence or tenacity or the ability to persevere. The other side of that coin is being flexible enough to know when to pivot, when to change course, when to take on a new direction. I've given you five markers today of when to pivot, and hopefully you'll take a little time to look at the markers that you've developed for yourself throughout life. One thing's for sure, we don't want to fly our plane into the ground. So persistence is a good thing as long as it's taken us toward our joy, our expansion, and our success so that we have the most fulfilling journey that we can possibly have as we empower ourselves toward the self expression and who we are at our core without the negative emotions of ego, but with a clear mind, we're choosing a higher frequency, higher and better thoughts, because our choice of frequency, our choice of more positive emotions and thoughts, well, it changes the course of our journey, whether we're persisting in a given direction or we've decided to pivot. So, reflecting back on everything we covered today, how can you apply what you've learned? Do you find that you're a naturally persistent person, someone who moves forward toward your success? Or did you not realize that you have this natural ability before today? And if you've ever wondered when to be flexible and pivot toward a new direction, did today's episode give you a little insight so that you have other options besides giving up or hiding or avoiding certain situations where you just haven't known what to do? Well, I hope this helps you as you're using the powers of alchemy to transform challenges and obstacles into positive new successes. This podcast is all about helping you have success on your spiritual growth journey. It's all about getting unstuck by unlocking your hidden power. If you still can't get your head around what's got you stuck, you can tell me about it. You can send me a question to questions@unlockyourhiddenpower.com, or you may not know that you can schedule a one-on-one session with your own personal unstuckologist, that's me, by visiting instantbreakthroughsession.com. This private session is designed to help you tap into your greatest resource, that's you, And together, we can make quite a team toward calling in the transformational powers of alchemy. In our time together, we'll uncover your single biggest stuck point, the one you can't see. And we'll also go over the most genius way to create clarity so you can just move forward while one obstacle after another is obliterated. And we'll create a strategy to get you moving in a really good direction, the one that's aligned with your life purpose. If this sounds like a match made in heaven, you can hop on over to instantbreakthroughsession.com right now and book the time slot that works best for you. Well, thanks for joining me today, and I'm wishing you a life filled with all the alchemy you need to bring success to you. Feel free to share this video with anyone you know who's feeling stuck, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.